Okay, great. Hi, everybody. My name is Chris. I'll share my screen here and we'll get going. I think we're going to talk a lot today about how to focus and quiet the noise. And this is an absolute favorite, I guess we'd say like project, maybe even a passion project of ours here at Listio. And really I'm hopeful today that we can get a lot of your thoughts and your ideas as well, because I think this is maybe a project that'll never be truly over. It's kind of going to be a distant goal that we always strive for. But a little bit about me. I am CEO of Listio. I love really the accounting profession. I'm very passionate about the challenges that firms are facing today, largely probably because of my background. I spent several years at Arthur Andersen, 11 years in finance and accounting, and then the last 13 plus really building software for accountants, so about 30 years total in the industry. And one of the things I really always go back to is I'm very, very grateful for my roots, coming into the profession. And I always thought like, hey, look, accounting is such an awesome profession because, we get to do so many great things. We have great relationships with all these wonderful business owners. We get to see a lot of different businesses, right? We get to help people solve problems for them. And really, I think it's just extraordinarily rewarding. So as I look back, at my career really on that side of the desk, I always kind of, wonder why, more people aren't going into accounting, right? We should see a lot of new college grads coming in. The labor market should be very rich, and the jobs should be really, really rewarding. So, I think that's why we're here today, right? How do we build a better job and day-to-day for ourselves? And I think also, how do we build really a profession that people really want to be into, right? And how do we make that really attractive? So let's start with a kind of a quick question here, right? Which is, why don't we always love our jobs, right? I think it's hard to say, that, well, I've never been able to say I've always had total love for it. I think a lot of days tend to be hard. But in general, if we look at the data, right? If we look at the data, which is, we didn't conduct this survey, but is a very large survey they took for accountants. When asked, how meaningful do you find your work? Out of 5,221 accounting professionals, 36% responded 1 star. 36% responded. That's crazy. And in my mind, this whole thing should be flipped upside down. It should probably have 36 at 5, 27 at 2, and so forth. But I think this is really important because when we think about the state of the profession, the job satisfaction is somewhere on the level of security guard and retail cashier, comparatively. So clearly this needs to change. Not sustainable, right? So maybe a kind of quick, easy one here. How many of you often feel frustrated at work? Well, certainly we spend a lot of our time at work, so we don't want to feel frustrated all that often. And when we think about this too, it's very rare for us to talk to a lot of firms who certainly at times during the year don't feel short-staffed. So if you feel these things, go ahead, just kind of drop them in the comments. Davita's going to be helping us track a lot of this as we go. And feel free to fire in questions as well. Because we want to, we really want to, hear from you about, kind of what you're seeing and what you're facing as we go along here, okay? So what's the deal, right? What's the deal with the profession? I think in my mind, looking at it, it's really when we study accounting, what they don't tell us is when you enter the profession, there's really 2 jobs, right? There's 2 jobs in one. It's what we love to do, which is the problem solving, the accounting, getting things to balance, helping the clients, all that kind of thing. Awesome, right? If I could do that all day, show up to work, I have everything in my hand, I pick up the work, I bang it out, give it to the client, high fives, and call it a day. That's ideal. I think what they don't tell us when we're studying accounting is the other half is administrative, right? And that part can be a little bit soul sucking. So maybe this will be a little bit relatable to you, but pretty typical cycle here is client says, hey, can you do this for me? Awesome. We feel that pump. We got the job, we got the engagement, we get going. Okay, here's what we need to get stuff done. Then what happens? Well, I still need that stuff to get started here, right? And then, maybe we have to get a little more aggressive. They don't respond to our email. What do? We ask them again. Hey, I know you have a deadline. It's really important. I want to make sure we're totally on top of it. Maybe wait some more. Eventually, the client gets back late saying, hey, oh, here it is. The due date might be pretty close to when we got this stuff. And then we give our all, right? We step up. And I think we can probably share a lot of stories about how many times we've had to give our all, late nights, weekends, a lot of infringement on our personal time, right? And well-being. And then the cycle starts all over again. So it's probably a pretty familiar pattern, right? If we think about that, that's not necessarily stressing, the profession out, and the work tends to not be quite as joyful. And I think, overtime and long hours are part and parcel for many accountants, kind of everywhere. And so the idea here, and I think what we want to do today, is to really start talking about how we solve all this stuff and how we build a profession that people really want to participate in, that we can all thrive in, right? And so there's a couple ideas here, and this is where I think, we're running a bunch of tests, right? We're running a bunch of tests, and we'd like to share some of the things we're thinking about doing, seeing, et cetera. And would love to hear what you all think and what you all are doing as well. So if we can break it down into, ways to feel better about our job, to calm the noise, calm ourselves, make sure the staff feel great. I think one lens we could look at through is our biology. Another one is technology. Another one is sharing. And so these are all kind of really coming together, and I'll show you how. Let's start with biology. Let's start with how do we be effective? How do we feel good? How do we feel successful? And I think it starts with this idea that we all have this in common, right? We for millennia grew up really in tribes with a lot of social hierarchy, all that kind of thing. I think a lot of our wiring is typically very much hardwired to respond to others, right? We're hardwired to respond to others. So you ever get maybe a message on Slack or Teams or something, or a text message, and feel like you have to respond right away, even though you're in the middle of something? Kind of irrational behavior, right? But when we think about how we're programmed to respond, it kind of makes sense, right? Oh, this came in, I better get back to them. It maintains, it maintains our status in the tribe, right? I think also there's this idea that, this whole concept of multitasking. But if we think about our brains, we think about how we work, we're really not capable of multitasking. Our brains are chemical processors. We're not like semiconductors and that kind of thing. We're chemical processors, right? The chemicals move to an area, we think about things, and then, when that's done, it takes a little bit of time to switch context and do something else. So multitasking is kind of this fallacy, right? We also know that, I don't know you all, I think I've had some days where I've sat at my desk for 12 plus hours. I think there's probably more than a handful of those. But if we don't move throughout the day, we think we're beholden to sitting there all day, we're probably robbing ourselves of performance, right? And we have to sleep, right? Good rest is critical for, everything in life. So if we think about our biology and we start working backward from here, right? Let's talk about the proof points. So you're working on, something really hairy. You got a hairy project. Maybe you've got a deadline on it as well. You're really trying to solve something. And all of a sudden your digital devices start ringing. Has ever happened to anybody? You're sitting there and your digital device might be a phone. Maybe you have a client calling you over and over and over 3 times in a row. You're not picking up because you're trying to crack the code, right? But then they keep on calling. How do you feel? How about number 2? Off hours work versus work hour productivity. Are you more productive on weekends or more productive during business hours? Are you more productive at nights or during business hours? Probably has a lot to do with number 1, right? If you're distracted during the day, productivity probably goes down because all of a sudden we're context switching and multitasking. I find that, I can get into a flow state. If I get going on a night or an evening or a weekend, I can bang out a whole day's work in a couple hours typically, just because I'm not distracted. So how do we feel after a 15-minute walk? I think you can look at like Carl Jung. You can look at a lot of people who over the years have attributed most Aristotle, pretty much all the Stoics, et cetera, they all walked while they talked or walked and thought, right? Because when we're moving, our brains relax, we get in a different state. A lot of our best ideas come when we're out moving around. So how do we feel after 15 minutes? Can we come through and be more effective? I think the science shows that is actually true. I think scientifically, we're seeing that most of us can focus really well for intensively focus for 60 to 90 minutes. 60 to 90 minutes. After that, our productivity starts to decline pretty quickly. So if we start to think like, hey, our biology is kind of works on this rhythm where we're, as humans, we grew up moving all the time. Should we continue, to buck that trend and sit at our desks all day or not? And then lastly, how do we feel after a great night's sleep, right? Are we more balanced? Are we more focused? Are we more productive? The answer is probably yes to all of the above. I'm gonna go ahead and take a quick look here. We got some chats coming in. So how do you calm the noise? Do you respond after hours? That's a good one. We'll get to that in a second here. Another one says, I was a crazy person until I removed the email notifications from my phone, right? I moved to my team through Teams, but not to clients after hours. Smart. Digital distractions. These are both things we're going to get into. So I think from a mindset perspective, I think we always want to be designing our jobs, designing our companies, designing how we interact with clients and in with our teams around biology. Okay, that's why we start here. So first, let me get into sleep and movement, and we'll get into digital distractions. Okay, so let's talk about sleep for half a second. This was actually in the New York Times very recently. Quote, every single high-performing CEO that I work with prioritizes sleep. Every single one. I don't work with a CEO who doesn't sleep at least 7 hours every night, okay? This has to do with digital stuff because when you think about sleep, sleep is like a game. Getting good sleep is like a game, okay? And it has to do with digital distractions or digital lifestyles as well. So we've been running some tests at the company, and I'll share some of them. And the tests we're running have a lot to do with science. Okay, so we call it winning the sleep game. And there's a gentleman named Matthew Walker. He's one of the preeminent sleep researchers out there. It's called Why We Sleep. Highly recommend it, or just read the Cliff's Notes. But it really starts with understanding our biology, our circadian rhythms, cortisol, adenosine, all sorts of things that really regulate how well we can sleep and how well we can think and how clear we can be, okay? And I think when we start to respect these things, it makes it a lot easier. So those of you who do work at night, if you know Allison Ball on our team, she's been trying this and she got me a pair. In fact, I was gonna bring them here. Red glasses, okay? This is not just some model picture, but blue light blocking glasses at night before you go to bed. This will massively, the science is saying this will improve your sleep. We've been trying them at work just so we can show up to work, be more productive, and it actually, the science is likely right. So what we did was we actually got a bunch of people at work here, Oura rings as well. And I actually wear the Apple Watch now that tracks sleep. So you can see how well you're sleeping at night. And the reason why I value this is because this is really important for setting the stage for us as humans, as business owners, and so forth. Is setting the stage for us to respect how we're going to set the boundaries for ourselves and for our teammates and so forth. And the idea is, if we sleep well, we move well, etc., when we show up to work, we can show up to work with more force. Okay? We show up to work with more force, we can get more done. If we can get more done in the right environment, the job improves a lot. Our well-being improves, the job improves, and so forth. The teamwork improves. So we started with this idea, and it's proven that to work. So we're seeing great results. So Allison, if you know her, if you want to talk to her about it, with the Oura Ring and with her red glasses, she was tracking and getting sleep scores that were in the 70s, which is pretty good. But by following some of these basic things, such as red glasses, digital distractions, and so forth, she's now in the 90s, which is insane. It's absurd. It's really, really good. So I'd recommend, trying this. If you want to talk to any of us, please ask us questions. This is something that we're just really trying to set ourselves up for success, okay? The next thing we think about is, okay, so now we're feeling better. We're showing up to work feeling better. We want to have a good day all the way through. Okay, so we said, well, we better follow the biology again. Let's go ahead and see what we can do to move more frequently. So we need to talk to one another. Ideally, we would all be walking right now if we're having this conversation, right? Ideally. But, if we can build movement into our culture, this is going to give us a better chance to do a couple of things. And what's good for us individually is great for us as small teams or companies too, right? So walking meetings, if we can, meet and walk. So Davita's on the call with me today. I think she and Allison meet on Zoom and walk. Allison and I have phone calls, just regular phone, an hour meetings here and there, and we're walking. So that's been really helpful. And I think culturally, it sends a signal to everybody we're working with that accounting can be a really healthy, healthful profession, right? We're not stuck at our desks. We can throw off the green visor, get rid of the stack of paper, and get out and just walk, right? All the stereotypes about this, those are all things we can break. For those who have a lot, maybe cold winters here, it's hard to get out of the house, use an app, right? Peloton is inexpensive. If people in our company want, I'm happy to pay the fee. We got a question here. I love the idea of walking meetings. What about taking notes? So what I do is on my phone, if I'm taking a walking meeting, I use on the iPhone, I use Apple Notes. And so I create categories. And so if you were to look on my phone right now and go to my notes, what you'd see is I have a category for everybody. So if I have a meeting with, let's say, you, Julia, that we have quite frequently, I'd have a category for that note, which might be weekly meeting with Julia, or we might have another one for weekly team sync, etc. So I'd have my agenda on here. I take my notes on here as well, and they're on the phone, get back, and we can go ahead and distribute them. So it takes a little bit of getting used to, but I love having the notes on the phone, because now I can just copy them and paste them into whatever we're using as a permanent storage to memorialize what we were talking about. Good. And then set achievable goals. So if we have goals to stand up, if we have goals to move, I set my goals not that high. My goal on my watch says move 450 calories a day. Nothing too high, but if I'm consistent about it, that's a great thing, right? So set achievable goals, building the culture. I think you're going to see immediate results from these things. We started doing it, and they're quite good. Now, the issue about this is you can't, we're working with teammates. We're not running cults, so to speak. So if people aren't into it, that's fine too. Everybody has their choice, but that's what we try to encourage. And that's what I try to do myself. Just I feel good every day. As important, I want to join a walking cult. is one of the comments. Me too. Me too. That's on us, though. We can change the profession, by the way. If you think about how many people are here today, right? Lots of people here today. We can change the profession, right? If people see us thriving, right? If we're at, weddings, if we're out, family dinners, and our nieces, our nephews, all those kinds of people, they're all seeing us and we love our jobs. We're thriving, we're walking, we're helping, we're always just, looking great, feeling great, right? People are saying, wow, accounting is a great profession, right? But it starts with us, and that's what that's what I get really, 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 really excited about. I think one of the toughest parts about, just besides like what we do, internally and following our biology, is really understanding this and saying, okay, how is technology affecting our ability to bring our best selves to work all the time, right? Well, we're in the client service business, right? We have to tame the distractions. And I'm going to posit that when I came into the profession, I entered the accounting workforce in 1993. It was a very, very different space then. We did just about everything on paper. We had copy machines. It was very different. Email was barely even being used. And I would say that accounting job satisfaction in that time was much higher than it is today. Much higher. And I think it's frankly because of all the digital stuff, right? We would meet people in person. So we had very much a one-to-one relationship, and we got to see people. If you're an auditor, you go out, you sit in their conference rooms, you get to know them, you have lunch with them, all this kind of stuff. And you weren't getting all distracted. You're focused on a client, right? You weren't sitting there with a bunch of stuff, a bunch of electronics going off. So let's talk about the world we live in today, right? Actually, Catherine had a question. What's the app you're using for note-taking? I use Apple Notes. So it just comes with the phone. It's actually really quite good and syncs right with the computer as well. So Apple Notes if you have an iPhone. Google might have another one as well. If anybody wants to throw what you're using, any note-taking apps you all love, throw it in the chat and we'll call those out, okay? Okay, so how to minimize distractions so you and your team can focus. Tame digital disruptions, reimagine client communication, and empower your staff, okay? Doing all three of these things, pretty powerful. So we've got a fairly large company here. I wouldn't say we're huge. I wouldn't say we're small. We're spread across a gazillion time zones. So pretty, we're a global company, people in South Africa, designer in Tibet. Imagine that, right? So when you think about, having stuff come in from all over the place, and we have clients, obviously, lots and lots of clients who want to talk to us as well. So what do we do? Well, we have tried a bunch of things. And the best practice in my mind is the following. Take your chat app and mute it. Okay, take your chat app and mute it. So what you're seeing here is, as we're talking, I'm not getting any notifications, any disruptions from Slack or Teams. And we actually use both. Don't ask me why. No social media notifications, etc. We leave, and this is a company-wide thing. Okay, so if somebody posts something into a general channel, that general channel needs to be muted by everybody. And here's why I'm so adamant about this. Let's say I put something in the general channel right now, and let's say 50 people on our team read it. I just context switched 50 people from one message. Even if it's context switching 2 people from one message, it's probably too much, right? Unless it's really, really, really important. And so if I were to send 10 messages a day, actually, let's say I did 1 every hour. In general, I could literally take about, let's say it takes 5 minutes of context switching to read it, think about it, attention residue, all these things. I might cost everybody 5 minutes out of every hour if I send just 8 messages a day. Yeah. So mute them. Make sure your teammates mute them. Make sure they're not just living in them. Next thing is we need to train our team on what is and isn't acceptable in terms of what should be sent. And when I'm saying sent, I mean, it can be sent on anything. Think about email. How many people have ever received an email that just says, FYI, and you barely didn't know about it? What do you get from that? What do you get from that? Probably not a whole lot. How many of you, and maybe you can throw in your chat, describe in one word how you feel about the volume of email you get. It's a little bit of an adjective game, okay? Throw it in chat and I'll read some of these because I think this is really important. And while you're doing that, question is, will there be a replay? Absolutely, absolutely will. So chat coming in, overwhelmed.
Emails are killing me, panicked, anxiety, insane. Oh man, it's just coming in like a flood. I turn off my email all day.
There you go, Jen. Turn off your email all day. That's not a terrible thing. I think we look at the research. Research says the average person is checking their phone, just their phone, because all this stuff, checking their phone over 100 times a day. Most people are checking it hundreds of times a day. So that's a habit. I think all of a sudden we're suddenly into this whole thing of, if you think, if anybody read like Atomic Habits or anything, there's like like, why do we do things? We get in the habit, we reinforce these neural pathways to do the same things over and over, even though we don't know why. Just pick up the phone, check it, pick up the phone, check it. We really have to think about this. So in order to enforce better atomic habits, for those of you who are leading your organizations in particular, you have to lead by example, right? And we have to enforce. But the example is, we're not just going to send anything for no reason, because we can context switch everybody. And we're going to create an atomic habit, which is, if the boss sends something, I better look at it because I need to, back to our biology, we're social animals. Boss said something, I better respond right now. That means everybody on the team is me running around with the phone in their hand, waiting for something to come with the boss. Second it comes in, they're going to drop everything they're doing and respond. Is that what we want? That kind of thing will kill joy. And it doesn't matter if it's accounting, it doesn't matter if we're building rocket ships, whatever it is, just biologically, it's going to blow us up. So what do? When an email goes out, you want everybody to be very, very thoughtful as to first, whether or not it should even be sent in the first place. Because we are, to quote you all, we are frustrated. We are overwhelmed. We are panicked. We are being killed by email, right? And on and on and on. So is it worth shifting our attention? And more so, is it worth shifting our team's attention, right? Knowing that the cost of context switching could be up to 15 minutes. So there's this idea then that most stuff probably shouldn't be sent in the first place. I think we can make an argument that a lot of things shouldn't be sent. Those are the things that should be sent, should be really compact, really well thought through, and not just, I've done this many times, right? Maybe ask yourself if you've done it too. I've had a thought bubble, email, hit send. It's so easy to do, but that thought bubble is just a thought bubble. It might not be particularly actionable or particularly descriptive. Somebody's going to get it and look at it and say, well, gee, what am I supposed to do with this, right? So if you've ever had that, this is what we want to enforce. And so if somebody sends me an email or sends me a Slack or whatever it is, if I don't think it's appropriate, I will literally get on there and say, hey, please think twice before sending stuff like this because, right, our goal is to make everybody feel better in their job, right? We're doing it for the right reasons. We're doing it to respect our biology. We're doing it to respect one another. We're doing it to build a better profession. So a lot of the stuff we're sending then, if it isn't urgent, people can address it later. I just finished that complex task. I went for a walk. I'm going to come down, roll my shoulders a few times. I'm going to get up to date. I'm going to bring myself up to date with other, with some of the communication, this non-urgent stuff, right? But we're creating a new pattern about how we're going to work. Number 3, turn on focus time settings on your devices, etc. Super important. I turn on DND at night, and there's certain people, like if there's a server, that some people can get me, but in general, the number of channels that can reach me during family time and so forth is much, much narrower than it would be during the business day. I don't turn everything off. I wish I could. But I think, what we're trying to do is we're trying to find a good balance. And the biggest thing is really to reciprocate, right? If you do this with your team and you expect this from your team to one another and coming back to you, you start to build a reinforcing wheel, right? Somebody's getting pulled into an urgent meeting. Ironic. Thank you for coming. But yeah, we are going to get disrupted, right? That's the nature of our work. What we're going to try to do is we're going to try to set ourselves up for as few disruptions as possible. Okay. Let's move on. So the other thing is, like, we can do this internally. I think the other thing is we have to learn how to work with this externally with our clients in a different way. So we have to reimagine client communication. I think of it in a couple of different things. Like, what do we frequently see? Like, what happens to us if a client doesn't check their email, right? We have to suddenly chase. We have to remember on our side. This is admin work, right? This is admin work. You have to remember on our side, send them an email. They don't respond to the email. What do? Probably send them another email, right? So you get caught in these loops where we're doing a lot of not so rewarding work. Maybe a client can't log into the portal. What do? Well, we put on our IT hat and we help them out. This is another digital client disruption, right? Client, they got some financials from us or something. They can't find it. Disruption. What can we do? Can we say, no, I sent it to you, go find it? Can't do that. Raise your hand if this happens to you. Can't find that, whatever it was, tax return or, prior year financial set for getting a loan. They digitally disrupt us. We're in client service. We can't say no. We have to reimagine this. I sent it to your team. Okay, who on the team got it? What do? Well, if somebody gets something, what are they going to do? They're going to BCC everybody in the team? Well, that sounds pretty terrible, right? And that's why email becomes insane and frustrating and so forth. And maybe they don't check email, and maybe they don't like logging into the system, so they just want to text. Not a bad deal, right? We text people we love, right? We text our friends, we text our family. That's kind of probably how most people are interacting. So a client wants to text, it's really kind of hard to say no. It's a great kind of first circle relationship, right? But it has major digital disruption ramifications for our personal lives, our ability to step away from the business, right? If we're going to use our personal phone, super bad news. So what do? I think because of these reasons, this is why accounting is not as attractive as it used to be. It's much easier when people came into the office. I remember I grew up, my grandma was a bookkeeper, and people would come in, the door, bell would ring when somebody comes in. You have a client interaction, they go away and you could focus again. But things weren't just blowing up all the time like this. A lot of these questions didn't exist. So I would postulate right now that we're in the middle of a tech shift, right? Think about CX 1.0, which is client experience. It was in person. There's some phone calls, sure. Might have been some fax. There might have been some stuff, kind of heading through the US Post. This was pretty reasonable. But the second it started to move towards digital, it took an awful long time to get where it is now, right? Which is, I call this client experience 1.5, where some people are still calling us, sure. A lot of people are probably emailing. Email started, I'd say 1995-ish, where we started getting in the profession, probably more intensively. So that's quite a while ago, 27 years ago. But email didn't do everything. Can't send large files, can't get things signed, isn't very secure, all that kind of thing. Isn't integrated with the systems we're using. So with email, we had to add encryption, electronic signatures, a portal. People aren't checking email, like it's no longer an attractive venue. If you don't like it, you say it's insane, all this kind of stuff. If you're using it to interact with clients, what do the clients say about it? Probably the same thing. Their email is probably even worse, right? Because they don't have to professionally manage it for a living, right? So when you think about it, that's why people want to text, right? And then people are even finding us on social media or WhatsApp, right? A whole bunch of different ways. This is a total disequilibrium. This will not hold. What we've seen is the better way to do this is what banks are doing with us, which is everything goes in one place. Banks used to email us. We used to go to banks 100% in person. How many of you still go to the bank really ever? Only if necessary, right? What's happening? Everything moved to a bank app. So you probably have Bank of America or Chase or Schwab, whatever, on your phone, but you can do everything there. What did that do? What did that do to the number of inbound client service calls? Inbound client service calls to banks. What do you think? It floored them. All those distractions that the bank was having to deal with, having to have tellers to deposit checks, having to have phone lines and entire operations teams to re-mail monthly bank statements and so forth, largely gone. You want to get a bank statement from a bank? You don't call the bank. You go to the app, you download it. You want to get a tax form for your bank? Same thing. Deposit a check, use your phone scanner, right? All those things. This is fundamentally going to change the profession in terms of digital disruption in client organization and communication while making things more secure. So I'd say help is on the way. This is what we do at Listio. I'm sure you already figured that out. This is like fundamentally how I think the whole thing is going to evolve. Okay. So I think help is certainly on the way. The next thing then is now you got this team. Your team is probably now digitally distracting you less. You have a roadmap for having clients self-service more, which is a good thing. And then you can give your staff the right system. So really, if you think about this endless BCCing and everything getting trapped in email, this is obviously not going to hold. Like Salesforce is a mega company for a reason. You can't run a sales team. Any professional sales organization or even semi-pro sales organization, in a modern market uses a CRM. It's where everything goes. Salespeople live in there because you have to manage all the comms. If somebody walks out the door, the account information doesn't go with them. And so CRMs have been around for the last 30 some odd years in a big way. There's no looking back. Same thing's happening with customer service. Whenever you call somebody who has a customer service line or send a ticket or send an email, they use help desk software, which does the same thing. It helps them stay organized. The problem, that we've had in accounting, is we haven't had a cohesive system allows us to do that. So most accounting firms are using email, and that's creating and adding to the email mess. So it's not just a mess outbound and back for the clients, it's also a mess internally because we're BCCing and CCing each other to death, which multiplies the problem. So what we want to do is we want to co-opt the clients, right? So in our view, and what we're working on feverishly here is, that same wheel. Clients request work, we request information, but the tech gets the data from the client. The tech does. It makes it easier for them to do it, and you can send them automatic reminders, do all those things that we would normally have to do by hand. That takes away a lot of the admin. And because the tech is doing it, we're context switching less. We're not like picking up work saying, oh, gee, I didn't get to the client. I better send them another email, or I sent them 3 emails already, so I'm going to send them a text. That's not how modern companies run. Think about a hair salon. They probably already send you text reminders, right? Almost certainly your dentist does. We know OpenTable for restaurant reservations allow restaurateurs, great chefs, to open businesses without having to worry about as much in the front office anymore. Because people can book 24 hours a day. They can self-book. How much better that is than having to hire somebody to answer the phone. Yeah, let me see if we have a reservation or tables available on Wednesday at 8. Right? The tech is doing it. It's happening all around us. So accounting is going to change as well. So then clients can self-service, all those benefits come. So when you think about it and you put it all together, what we want to do is we really want to tame the noise, right? Control the digital disruptions. And if you want to talk about that, I think we can have we can even open it up. You can ask questions even live. Really control those. And it starts with us as business owners, as really champions inside the company. Then what we want to do is, I always encourage everybody here to focus hard for 60 to 90-minute blocks. Like just focus as hard as you can, get up and walk. You're going to feel better. You're gonna feel like you can come back, solve bigger problems, work more effectively for another block. And I'll tell you, if you do this, it's hard to stop doing it, okay? Because you just feel so much better so quickly. So when you take that break, move. Don't take the break, and this is what some people will get in this habit. Don't take the break and go to a digital news site, okay? Don't do that. That's super counterproductive, right? We're not giving our brains a chance to refresh. We're not moving our bodies and so forth. You know, if you want, throw a podcast on, take a walk. That's cool. But don't follow the trap of just taking a break, a 15-minute break, and staying online. That's super not good, okay? And that, by the way, that's really, really hard to do. That's a trap I keep on finding myself going into. Go back to the atomic habits thing, right? The trigger is I get a break, I'll go to the news site. Highly, highly do not recommend. And it's really, really hard to break. Action plans. So I started in talking about really our biology and so forth. So I think one of the great parts about our job is we can always build the companies we want to, right? We can build the companies we want. So solidify your vision about how you want your company to run, how you want your clients to interact with you, and then really just keep on focusing on that. And then share what works. So I shared some ideas today, and some of them might sound a little outlandish, but I'm a big believer in following the science. So I'm a big believer in sleep. Things like red glasses might sound pretty goofy. They certainly aren't particularly fashionable. My wife manages to afford me the opportunity to wear them without too much without too much pushback. But I do believe, like, you know, using a wearable is amazing for tracking, just to see how we're doing, checking in with ourselves quantitatively to back up and reinforce the good behaviors we're building. And muting channels and all that kind of stuff, it tends to be quite powerful. So what I would say is, you know, as you do this, I think you'll see within days, not weeks, that anxiety levels across the firm will move in the right direction very quickly, very quickly. Productivity tends to go up, not down. So even though we might be theoretically working fewer hours, we're able to come with more force, with more joy, with more vigor. We're able to be better to ourselves and better to one another by allowing ourselves to move and not feel like we're beholden to the phone. It's kind of funny. I had dinner with a friend of mine. We're at a restaurant. It was about 8:45 at night. And throughout the dinner, his boss was slacking him, and he had Slack on. And we're just trying to eat. And he was just, you know, at some point he's like, I know why this is happening. It's because I didn't respond to an email at about 5 or 6. And now my boss wants to make sure they get an answer from me no matter what, just to know I'm there. Because I think they're worried that, you know, and I think a lot of people might have fallen into this habit. If you're not present, you're not physically, you can't see them there, people worry, is this person working? And so it just became this whole thing. And all through dinner, it was one of those like digital disruption. Well, he had been working all day. He's like, I did all the stuff. This is not important, but this is the kind of thing that'll drive me away from the company. And I think about that, and I think about, like, well, why are millennials, or, you know, I don't want to use it, you know, generational descriptors. Why are people coming in the profession and leaving so quickly, right? What are our habits? Can we build something that people want to participate in? So anyway, so I'm a big believer in productivity. I'm a big believer that we can, you know, slowly, you know, or sometimes even more quickly over time, get the team to buy in. Because in my view, it makes sense. And I think we've had good success at that. Oh, here's a good one. These are great tips. My work email isn't connected to my personal phone. How many other people here can say that? My work email is not connected to my personal phone. Wow. Eloise, I'd like to hear from you more on that. Do you feel like you're giving up and sacrificing anything by not having work email on your personal phone? Wow, and here's another one from Jen. I don't have any work apps on my phone. Boy, I'm feeling pretty guilty. Eloise says, no sacrifice, I feel free. I love that. I love that. This is really important. This is really important. I feel like, how many of us don't love our clients to pieces? And how many of us would feel guilty if we were to miss something? I always think, I always think of accounting, I always think like, we might be one of the more guilt-ridden professions. Like we feel guilty if we take care of ourselves or prioritize ourselves over our clients sometimes. I love this. No sacrifice. I feel free. That's amazing. These are the stories that we want to get people sharing, because if we all felt that way, why wouldn't accounting be a top 10 profession? So we're all in this together. I think many of you might already be members of the Grove and so forth, but the Grove is a place where we can all go share our stories. Davida, we should make sure there's a thread we can share with everybody on the Grove to talk about tips such as not having any work apps on their personal phone. Reminds me like having a clamshell phone, really, like the whole point is to have these apps, and these apps want to install themselves. I mean, I've got QBO and Slack and email and everything on my phone. I got to make a change. But there's a link in the chat to the Grove. These are the conversations we want to have, because I think we can inspire one another, inspire others to try new things. So I think what I'm going to try today is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to delete half of my work apps today and see how that goes. If that goes well, the next week I'll delete the other half. So you can follow up on me with that. And so the Grove is also, this content will be out there. So if you have team members and so forth that you think this might be helpful for, we'll post it out there. There's no cost to joining the Grove or anything. It's really a place just to share and learn. And I'm hopeful that the Grove will be a powerful agent for change in the profession for everyone. Cool. So with that, open up to any more questions. Thank you for the comments, everybody. You're all very wonderful, very, very gracious. Any questions, any items we should talk about?
If you want to put any of your questions into the Q&A, I'm happy to read them out to Chris so he can answer them directly.
Not too much. So we actually get everybody get some time back here. So I hope this is helpful. Please, my email is Chris, CHRIS, @liscio.me. If you have any questions or if there's anything you recommend we can do to improve and so forth, please let us know. We do these things just to share, but we love your feedback so we can always get better. So thank you, everybody. Keep trying new things. Share them with us, share them with the Grove, and we really appreciate your being here. Okay? Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.